ESG is better known now as environmental, social and corporate governance. It's something that in a sense is not new, but it is something that actually we're going to hear an awful lot more of in 2022. It's important to all employers and all businesses because it's going to be a key aid both in terms of attracting and retaining your key staff, and it's going to be a fundamental pillar of all key commercial contracts, both not just winning new key commercial contracts, but also just retaining those which we already have. So bear in mind, it is not anything new as such, but what it is, it's going to be a key consideration for employers and businesses going forward because we're going to see increased focus on it. It is, broadly speaking, the ethical auditing of the entire workplace and our working practices. It will look at pensions funding in terms of life after work. Those are aspects we're already aware of, and we've seen, for example, the government transitioning responsibility for key elements of our workplace away from the state and into the private sector and the employer's control. Hence, pensions, the state pension is effectively gone, and now the employer is solely responsible for auto-enrolment and related. On top of that, we have healthcare provision, both direct and indirect. Direct for the sake, for example, in relation to maternity pay, paternity pay, parental leave. Those elements have been with us for some years and are going to continue with us, but the emphasis is going to increase. There are core aspects of the employment relationship where ESG is already critical. We have it for many years in relation to national minimum wage. We have it with the national living wage. We also have it, for example, in simple things like holiday pay and ensuring that your employees actually take their leave. But it's so much more than that. Diversity and inclusion has been the watchword of recent times, but again, that is a lot more than just LGBTQ+ and all that entails in terms of awareness. 2022, 2021 and going forward, we're going to see increased focus on disability in the workplace. The Equality Commission for Northern Ireland is one of their major focuses, and rightly so. And we're going to see how employers are obliged to consider that in their recruitment policies and protocols. We already in Northern Ireland, of course, have religious belief and political opinion as a sphere of influence in Northern Ireland for several years. But again, that is going to increase and change and focus as our demographics and our cultural norms change as well. Things like trade union membership, the freedom for employees to join trade unions is an indicator of the fears faced as a consequence of the global pandemic and the economy coming out of the pandemic and what that means for individuals in the workplace. We're going to see increased trade union membership, and sometimes that creates a fear factor amongst employers, but that is something that actually should be navigated early and navigated well, and build the proper relationships with your employees, with the trade unions, to the extent that we are recognising within the workplace, to making sure that the holistic perspective of the workplace is a much better place. Bearing in mind also, we have some statutory pieces of legislation that deal directly with this. We have the Modern Slavery Act from 2015, which went through a Crown review in 2019, and that impacts on all of us because it illustrates that every employer, every business either holds a supply chain or rather is part of a supply chain. Let's see how this has developed over time. Initially, the Modern Slavery Act principally focused on sex trafficking, child labour. The impact for business was really quite small, but as time goes by, that has developed and increased significantly, and it falls under the umbrella of ESG now. Because it has to bear in mind that all employers are either part of a supply chain or own a supply chain. We have a responsibility now under the legislation to audit that, and that falls back into ESG as what I term ethical auditing. But ethical auditing is not just confined to the workplace. In any commercial contract, we're seeing increased significance there, both for environmental awareness, sustainability, climate change awareness in relation to how we're sourcing raw materials, products, how our clients source that, deliver that, maintain that. And we're seeing that being written into fundamental commercial agreements with key contractors, key suppliers, key business users, so that if a business does not get that right, not only are they giving away warranties, indemnities in relation to that compliance piece, but also there's a real risk that you're going to lose that existing key contract if we don't have it built in as our bread and butter and as our lifeblood within a commercial contract. Environmental awareness also sits within the workplace again by way of new form working with employees. The pandemic has illustrated the need for employees for proper engagement. Open book, empowered employees need to have better communication from employers, which traditionally has just not been there. Hybrid working or agile working, again, is something that will fall under our approach to ESG within the workplace. Get it right, and we will have a hugely empowered and loyal and committed workforce. Get it wrong, and you will see a significant inability to attract and retain key staff. It is a continuing trend of government passing responsibility for a lot of key aspects like pensions, healthcare, climate, sustainability. Fairness in the workplace is being passed from state to employer. Moreover, that is not just a one-way street. Employees and prospective employees are fundamentally focused on what kind of employer ethically is my employer. Am I going to go? Am I going to stay? Am I going to be convinced by what that employer is doing to live and work and progress through 2022 and beyond? It's going to impact all of our commercial contracts, which we need, but it's also going to impact the commercial contracts that we want to tender for. We at ALG are seeing an awful lot of tenders being written for procured services, for key contracts, where the entity procuring the services is requiring any tenderer to illustrate a fully considered ESG policy. So it's hugely important for our staff, it's hugely important for our commercial contracts, and it's hugely important for us to recognise that we are A, a supply chain holder, and B, a member of a third-party supply chain. So there is no ability for us to bear our head in this. There's no capacity for that, and it will be entirely the wrong thing to do. So if we consider how serious and how important this actually is for our future business growth, well, what do we do next? I've covered a lot of subjects here. I clearly could go into a lot more detail on each and any of them, but what I would say is, if any of this has resonated with you and has raised questions or concerns, then speak to whoever it is in ALG as your first point of contact. If you want to come and speak to me, let's set up an appointment and deal with that. I know Mark Stockdale, one of my colleague partners, is very focused on ESG from the environmental perspective, particularly because of his work in the energy industry. And both Mark and myself and team members within ALG will be delivering a number of seminars on ESG throughout the year and as we progress. Thank you.